College gridiron now. Top 15 matchup Saturday in the SEC. Third-ranked Georgia hosting 14th-ranked Tennessee. Georgia nearly a 2-touchdown favorite with a total of 43. Bulldogs lead the FBS in rush defense and scoring defense, only allowing 12 points per game. So all that criticism of the QB play to start things out, but at least their defense is advertised. Stanford Steve back with me, as is ESPN Analytics insider Brad Edwards. All right, we'll start with you, Brad. Do you think Georgia takes care of business here? Because lurking next week is Alabama.
Yeah, I think that's a big story in this game. It's that proverbial sandwich. You know, with Auburn last week, Alabama next week. Sure, they're not going to overlook a top 15 team, but given the recent history in this series, I think it's easy for Georgia to take this one for granted. It's also a game that I think stylistically is going to be slower pace, which might lend itself to Tennessee hanging around. Both teams are going to try to run the ball. I think both coaches have more confidence in their offensive line and their running backs than they do in their quarterbacks and receivers. And so because of that, it's going to be a slower pace. Steve, you see these three teams, what do they all have in common? Top rushing teams in the SEC. What do their coaches have in common, I guess, is the better question. What did they do before they became head coaches?
Former coordinators and coaches at
there you go. They were all defensive coordinators, and they have that mindset. And these two were former coordinators under Saban. So I think they're going to be conservative here. They're going to kick on 4th and 1 a lot, and just what you need for a lower scoring type game.
And the odds makers kind of agree. 43 is a low total, particularly in college football. Steve, what about you?
I think Brad just likes this game because both centers on each team are going to be yelling, huddle up, let's go, huddle up. We got to huddle, get the play right. I see what Brad's saying there. Georgia has completely dominated Tennessee. The last 3 times they played, I think they've outscored them by 100 points. I do like the fact that Chaney's a former Georgia offensive coordinator. Feels like he's coached everywhere in the SEC. But, Brad, I don't like to say conservative. I like to say stubborn. Both these teams are going to be stubborn and to keep trying to run the ball. They love being able to say that they're the more physical team. But this is a big opportunity for Tennessee, man. It really is. I just hope they come out and play well. If I had to lean in this game, I would take the points here. Interested to see what Georgia comes out offensively, though. That's going to dictate this game.
Yeah, Steve, you didn't just throw that number 100. I think it's 96 they've been outscored in the last 3 games combined. Let's talk Miami-Clemson. Brad, as you know, the Tigers have been just trucking ACC opponents the last few years. A lot of buzz with Miami maybe being able to pull off the road upset at Death Valley. Are you buying Miami as a legit threat here?
Not really. In the same way that I think it's a bad spot for Georgia, I think it's a great spot for Clemson in that they have finally a conference game in which people are saying their opponent might have a chance. And I know you're probably not going to find anyone who's going to pick Miami to win outright. But if you're Clemson, all you need is just a little bit to latch on to. The fact that this game is being taken seriously is enough to motivate Clemson in this spot. And I've heard a lot of people this week compare this to 2016 when Lamar Jackson and Louisville went into Death Valley, and that was a great game. To me, though, Doug, it feels more like the following year when Clemson went to Louisville to face Lamar Jackson again, and everyone was touting this as an opportunity for an upset. You were there. You and I were both there for that game.
We were there, yeah.
And man, was it lopsided. It's a bad thing to have Clemson's undivided attention when you're an ACC team.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson, every pass he threw was just perfect, right in the right spot, and everybody was dominating. Steve, you've been to, you know what you're talking about here with these teams and these programs. You know what it's like to be in the locker room of a team that thinks they have a chance as a 14-point dog. What do you expect?
I expected Miami come out with everything. You saw how Clemson had a little trouble last week with a mobile quarterback with Virginia. But as to Brad's point, I talked about it yesterday. It feels like this used to be like the old Duke in basketball where, Clemson is now that in football. They're just bored. And now Dabo finally doesn't have to come up with something to, give him some fake, motivation. It's right there. You see the 7 next to Miami's name. You have a top 10 team coming in here. This is really interesting to see what Clemson does. We know that they have the most talent in the league, but it is a wary spot, and I'm really interested to see how Clemson comes out, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because Miami, let's face it, hasn't faced any defenses that are even close to what Clemson has.
And for all the warranted excitement over De'Aaron King and what he's done for this offense, The area where they really struggle the most is downfield passing, and Clemson is just too good near the line of scrimmage for you to succeed throwing the ball if everything is underneath and intermediate. You've got to be able to connect down the field to stress them. Miami has not done a good job of that in its first few games.
And by the way, I misspoke earlier. It was Kelly Bryant that game. We were at other games earlier with Deshaun Watson.
I wasn't going to correct you.
Was the QB.
I was just going to let it go.
I think it was the other game. We're on the field. It's tough. We got so much going on. Stanford Steve knows what it's like traveling with College Game Day on ESPN Radio. We got all our worlds colliding. Let's keep it in the ACC here. Virginia Tech and North Carolina. Brad, what are you expecting here from the Tar Heels?
This is such a weird game because you have two teams that just really struggled with continuity. With Virginia Tech, back-to-back games after a late start to the season, where they've had 20-something players and a few coaches out because of COVID-related stuff. North Carolina played in week 2, then didn't play again until week 5. But I look at Carolina, and the reason that they haven't really looked the way that people expect them to coming in is some of the little things. Okay, penalties, not taking care of the ball, special teams. And while, yes, these are all important parts of football, these are also things that can be ironed out. You look at the way that they're struggling in those areas through their first couple of games. I think Carolina, now getting a chance to play back-to-back games for the first time, will start to work out some of those kinks. I still worry about Virginia Tech because of all the guys who've been out. Hendon Hooker, their quarterback, is supposed to be back and playing for the first time this season, but I just think it's a lot to ask from Virginia Tech with all they've been through.
I got burned by Carolina late, the 2 touchdowns at Chestnut Hill against BC. Steve, what about you in this game?
Yeah, I see what Brad's saying. When you watch North Carolina, it's just been sloppy, but they have the goods, and I'm still waiting for that bust-out game. We thought it might come week 1 against Syracuse. I thought maybe, last week with good weather up in Chestnut Hill. Well, I'm very wary. It's a stay away for me. North Carolina does have the goods for a really breakout game very soon.
Yeah, I think Virginia Tech's a good team, but when you've been through that much roster turmoil, it's tough to come out and play a good game, especially against a good team.
Gentlemen, good to connect, talk some college football. We have 3 different regions. I like this. This is fun. All right, guys, we'll see ya.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.